All right, guys, back again. So I just watched Audition from 1999 because it was on Joe Bob's last drive-in, and I have never seen any movie from this director, Takashi Miike. Like I looked it up and I never seen any of them. Japanese horror is definitely something that I have not delved enough into, and I have liked some Japanese horror that I've seen, but good God, like watching this movie, I want to see more J horror because this movie was fantastic. So the movie is basically about this character, Ayama, who he and his wife has died. I think she's died. I think it said died. I can't remember if it's died or divorced. I believe it's died. She has died. He has a son behind that's left behind with him. Um, he and his friend make a false audition or fake audition to try to figure out who would be the wife for Ayama. So they audition all these girls, and it's really funny too because these girls have really good funny moments because there's like a full scene of an audition of all these different women, and they're just doing or saying funny things. There was one girl who auditions and then she comes back and then she says, or they say, "Why did you come back?" And she said, "Well, I had more to say." Or like there'd be girls doing cheerleading dances, there'd be girls talking about being in porn or doing suicide attempts, like stuff like that. It's all pretty funny with those jokes that they made. Not off jokes like suicide. It wasn't a joke about that, but like it was funny to see the differences between all these different characters like going through the audition. But the audition isn't really an important part of the movie. But he sets up an audition and they eventually settle upon a girl that they find named Asami, who is almost always positioned on camera where you don't always see her face. You do see her face a good amount, but when you don't, it is really creepy. And it's this woman you know nothing about, or he knows nothing about, and this is just a great horror movie with that. That's the basic plot. I'm going to get into spoilers a little later, but right now, that's the basic plot. I want to say that for the first, I don't know how long it is. The Joe Bob show was like 2 hours, 35 minutes. It might have been an hour and a half, hour 45. But because there's usually like an hour or so of intermissions with Joe Bob, but the the first half of the movie, I really didn't think that this is a movie that would go the way it goes because the movie is set up to where it's partially unsettling, where this character is seeing Asumi and Asami and looking at her and liking her, but there's something off about her. There's something creepy. There's something weird, and he just kind of neglects the fact that there is something weird and odd about this woman. And the first half is just very slow in a good way. I'm not saying that as a negative. It's slow in which you have to build up the crazy shit that happens in the second half of the movie. It's very well executed, very very well executed. Um, I like how it's just a very good progression from a romantic kind of movie with a little subtle hints of creepiness to a full-on horror movie at the end of the movie. It is horrifying. Um, I like the fact that it just has a lot of visual cues in this movie as well that work very, very well. Like I said, having Asami from behind, you see her face, but whenever you don't, it's always so disturbing. And it's also dreamlike because the movie also messes with the idea of is this dream or not a dream, whatever. Like it does that in the movie, which I think is good. I love movies up to interpretation like that. But they do a great job with that. It's so funny to mention this moment, but the moment that these two characters have sex, it's such a cool editing shot because this character, he jumps on the bed, the blanket goes on them, then the blanket turns, and then he's in bed alone. And it's like it was a really cool editing choice of like this is about to happen, boom, it's over. And like it's so fluid and it doesn't feel like it even like was a cut. And I thought that was really cool. Very cool choice with that, with the choice of Asami being from behind. Um, the way she talks to him is disturbing, and you can clearly tell there's something off, but he's in love with her, madly in love with her. Um, and the score in this, as it gets towards the end, the piercing violins really work. Like it is a horrifying score, and the fact that violins do something to the human mind, or like with, for example, Psycho, Friday the 13th, those have violin scores, and people say those are some of the scariest because using violins heighten like an emotion in a human, like where it's it messes with like their nerves, like, and I really thought that was cool, the use of violins, because I love having violins in horror movie scores, and this one does it very, very fantastically. And like I said, the first half is not purely a horror movie. The second half is completely and utterly a horror movie, and it is so good. But again, being a Japanese movie though, it is a horror movie, but it also has moments of emotion, and really good emotion too. Like I like how the movie isn't just pure up horror, and that's what they do really good with those movies, and with Japanese movies. Like for example, House, which I watched last year, House from 1977. I watched it for like October, and I really loved how that movie was a horror movie, but it had like the most cutesy score ever. Like that's not for a horror movie. If you were in America, they wouldn't have had that. But because they're in Japan and they like to be different and experiment, and I really like what they do with their kinds of movies. I like how this movie does that too, where it's a horror movie by the end, but there's still an emotional connection to these characters, and it still is very, very well executed. I just love how Japanese movies do this. Now, the ending. I've got to talk about the ending. So I talked about the rest of the movie. The ending genuinely creeped me out, and I don't get creeped out much by movies. I love that. That was so great. So by the end, Ayama is paralyzed and drugged by Asami, and Asami literally tortures him, where she puts needles in his eyes, puts needles in his chest, stands over his chest, bends all the needles. She cuts off his feet with wire that's sharp enough to cut human skin. I'm already feel gross just thinking about it, and it is just horrifying. It is genuinely so scary, and the movie had some great horror moments before it. Like for example, whenever he finally finds out what's in that bag that Asami has, where it's just a person with their legs taken off or their feet taken off, so they got nubs, and like they're just crawling around, and they have no tongue, and they have like one finger out of five, and it is horrifying. But she does the same thing to Ayama at the end, where like she cuts off his feet, and he is going to become her, just stuck like that other person was. And it's terrifying. It is genuinely horrifying, and how they made that stuff is very cringy in a good way, with the effects of with the feet getting cut off, with putting the needles on him, and the way, because again, this is all in Japanese, it's just dubbed, but the way that she says a line, deeper, 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 but she says it in Japanese, she's like, dee, 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 like she says it like that, dee, 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 and it's very horrifying, because it's such a cutesy little voice that she's doing while she's doing this awful, horrendous stuff, and it is genuinely terrifying. It is probably one of the scariest horror movies I've seen, and I really don't get scared at horror much, and I was just like, I felt like I was going to throw up, and I never have that reaction to horror, and I was genuinely surprised in how great this movie was. Holy shit. So, and it's so weird because she dies, question mark, at the end, and like they've got that emotional moment. This is where I was talking about the emotion, where she's dying, or she might be dead, who knows, because this movie really does play with your periphery of like, is this really happening, is this not, is he really getting tortured, is she get really dead? But whenever it shows her dead, but she's talking and saying like, nobody ever understood me like you do, like you're the only one who understood me, that was such a great moment, and I just didn't expect it to be in this horror movie. I loved the movie. I thought it was so fantastic. It just ended fantastically, it started fantastically. It's funny, it's horrifying, it's romantic. It has a lot of genres in it, but it never feels like it's tonally wrong. Like, if that makes sense. Because there's some movies where you can watch and be like, oh wow, that's really tonally off, or that just doesn't work for me. this one worked for me in every way. I really, really loved Audition. So that's pretty much all I could say. I really enjoyed it. If you guys like it as well, tell me down below. And if I spoiled it, sorry, you should have stopped because I said spoilers. But I really love this movie. It's great. I definitely want to watch it again, but it might take a while because it was hard to watch at the end. But really, really loved it. Want to see more of this director's work and more J horror in anyways, regardless. But yeah, that's all I can say for today, and I'll see you guys later. Take care.